All right. Thanks, Coach Bandstra, for having me on here. My name's Coach Spahn. I'm the head coach at Grand Rapids High School and wanted to talk a little bit about zone dive today. Give you a little history about myself. I played at the University of Wisconsin River Falls from 1999 to 2003. The man who was the head coach there, John O'Grady, is an incredible influence of mine. He has impacted my life tremendously. Allowed me to start coaching there in 2004. I was a lineman, a center and a tackle, and then kind of back to center again when needed. After college, when I coached there, my wife and I moved to Colorado. We lived in Manitou Springs, coached at a middle school out there for a couple of years, and then was the running backs coach at Colorado College with a good friend, Tim Taylor, who's a option coach in Georgia. Moved to Minnesota, coached at a small school in Big Fork, Minnesota. It was a 9-man school, which is, pretty, it's different. The rules are different. It made me a better coach. Had some good success there. And then I've been at Grand Rapids since 2014. A little bit about our program as well. We're a pretty big hockey community. Football has had spurts of really success, never really been sustained, and we're working to build that success and sustain that success over the long haul here, and I think we're well on our way. One of the key elements to our offense, and we're a triple option team, is the zone dive, and this is has changed for me over time as I've looked at it and looked at the possibilities of it and how beneficial it is to our offense. All this stuff is stolen. I think that's kind of how a lot of coaches operate. A lot of it came from my time in River Falls and in Colorado at Colorado College, and then just from other contacts I've made from Tim Taylor to different clinics and things like that. The zone dive really has gained prevalence and popularity over the past 5 or 10 years. And there's different ways to block it. It's become more and more effective. It's a pretty inexpensive play. And I'll talk about it later, but for us, in different looks and sets, we get kind of a dual look, which I think is beneficial for our offense because it jacks up some of the keys. We teach it to resemble a triple option. There's different ways to block it in terms of schemes, formations, stuff like that. And it aids in the identification of running those option plays. And when this first started, we would teach zone dive 22-23 as simply put, we block it just like we block triple. And that's changed for us over time where we're going to zone the whole front side of the play and then let our back make the correct cut, make the correct read. So we'll talk real briefly looking at different positions I'd like to go through. So just in general, in our offense, in our triple option offense, your offensive line is critical. We're going to put our best guy at center, put our two guys who can base block at guards, and our most athletic lineman at tackle. We want their stances to look fairly similar, right? Should have some white knuckles, butts up in the air. You're looking through your eyebrows. We have 3-foot splits across the board. Once they've been in the system long enough, they know how to vary those based on different plays and series and things like that. We ask the linemen to get their down hand on the tongue of the center's cleats. We try to be specific with that. 3-point stance, 4-point stance, we're pretty flexible as to what is comfortable for the kids. When we're looking at zone dive, what you're going to see a lot in the different positions is that first bullet where it says roll the backside knee, okay? And we got this from Larry Thexton and guys at Harding, and basically it's a technique to get people off the ball quicker. right? And that's kind of the first thing that moves is you roll that backside knee, and it brings you on through. So we teach this to our linemen, to our B backs, to our A backs, to everybody, in order to get them off the ball a little quicker. I'll have some diagrams and stuff like that here as well. Backside tackle. Okay, you're going to block inside gap to backer according to the call. That's what ATC means. Sometimes we'll have them block out if there's a 5, if there's a chaser, but typically they're blocking inside gap to backer. Okay, the backside guard is blocking inside head up to inside gap according to the call. So they could base it. We could scoop the backside. There's different things we can do, but essentially those are the rules for that. Our center takes what we call a 22 path. And essentially what that means is a 45-degree angle play side up to the backer, helping that play side A gap if the play side guard needs it. Play side guard's going to base the double on the way up, and the play side tackle's going to double team according to the call. So based on the front, it'll depend upon who he's double teaming. That could be with the guard, with the A-back, with the tight end. I'll show some clips with the tight end here in a little bit. But you can see as we go through part of this, and if we can do it well enough, it looks a little bit like duo on the front side. So I've got this drawn up against an even front and an odd front. So in this instance, if we start with the backside tackle, okay, different calls here, but he's blocking inside gap to backer. He's going to scoop that 3. There are times where we'll base with the backside guard and block out, block back with the tackle, trying to influence the eyes on this backer. Okay, center's taking a 22 path. If there's somebody in that A gap, that turns into a double team with the play side guard because there's a 2-eye there. B gap's open. That's one of the things we look at. Okay, B gap open or closed. So if this were a 3 and we're running it towards a 3 instead of the reduced technique, 22 path up, looking at that scraping backer. Okay, play side tackle is going to work a double team with this A-back, okay? And we'll get into all that stuff here in a second. But essentially, we've got a double team here accounting for these 2, okay? We got this counting for these 2, and the B-back is on his path here. You can see there's essentially an unblocked defender. What we're hoping to do is to influence that with that guy with the motion and to have our B-back make a cut, okay, off of that. But it's all predetermined. As we're going through this, we have people responsible for number 2 and number 3, okay? So if this were to happen, if we were to load here, we'll get into it in a little bit, and he jumps out, we're going to let him go, and this will turn into a tighter load path on up, okay? And again, there's different variations and things like that as we go through. If we're looking at it against an odd front, okay, backside will cut off that 4-eye, work a scoop on the 0 tech nose and work that on up. We'll double team on the front side with the play side guard and the play side tackle. We can get into their techniques and stuff like that as we go through, but we teach double teams, I think the same way that most teams across America teach double teams. We're stepping inside foot, hip to hip and going there. Those 2 guys are responsible for the stack right here. And then we'll zone this front side where he's going out on 2, okay? Quarterback's coming through. It looks just like triple. B back, we'll get into aiming points and stuff like that here. But up front, the key when we're practicing this is to rep different fronts, right? And so every day we're working against an odd front, we're working against an odd stack, we're working against a 8-man box, a 7-man box, all that stuff as we go through. When we go back now and look at the A-backs, okay, their stance is similar in almost everything that we're going to do. Their feet are shoulder width apart. We teach them to be a half yard by a half yard from the tackle. That varies depending on the play and the intelligence of the A-back. We've got some pretty good ones, so they can kind of move where they need to. A-backs should be able to feel the cadence. They have to be able to time their different motions. And be able to feel that cadence. And again, the big point for this is their first step is rolling that backside knee. Okay, as we go through the backside A-back. Okay, the key in zone dive for the backside A-back is he's responsible for number 3. So if we go back to this, the backside A-back would be responsible for this safety. So his motion, okay, has to influence this guy in order to pull him out and hopefully create a better lane for the B-back as he goes through. We want them to sell the perimeter run. We want them to sell toss or the second phase and the triple. There's different ways we can accomplish that through different types of motions. But the big part is that the play side A-back is responsible, or the backside A-back, is responsible for number 3. When we look at the play side A on zone dive, they're going to double team with the tackle. And this takes work and practice. They'll probably be a little bit tighter in their alignment with the tackle. But they're going to double team and zone that front side with the tackle. So those 2 players will be responsible essentially for number 1 and an in backer, number 1 and sometimes number 2, depending on when he's lined up. But the whole idea is they want to get under 1, and we're going to block number 1. So you're going to run zone dive if nobody's closing, right? Or if 2's giving you a heck of a hard time and they're running to pitch, or they're trying to force the pitch on the quarterback. We're going to run zone dive, and we're probably going to run zone dive until number 1 closes, right? If number 1's not going to close, it should open up like the Red Sea. And we get that with a double team with the A-back. Now, we used to teach this where it would look just like triple, and we'd veer, we'd loop, and all that stuff with the tackle, and the A-backs would be doing the same thing they did in triple. And what I found out was that, man, I wasn't being a very good coach because we're getting our B-backs mauled, unnecessarily, where that guy's getting a free shot. So we're looking at, in zone dive now, having a double team with the play side A. We want a double team on the front side, 2 double teams if we can get them. And I'll show you how that looks here in just a little bit. Our B-back in our regular offense and in our zone dive lines up about 4.5 yards from the tip of the ball. We vary this based on the ability of the B-back, right? So if they're quicker, we'll move them back a little bit. If they can get there, if they're not as quick, we'll bump them up a little bit. But we want this to be able to hit quick, but still allow the B-back time to read. Okay, we want his weight forward on his hand. We want the B-back's eyes to be up. So before the snap on each play, we want the B-back to be able to identify who number 1 is and who the cut key is. Okay, so we call it a cut key. Other teams will call it action key. But your cut key is the person that the first defender inside number 1. And that's going to determine the path of the B-back on zone dive and if we get into triple and all that stuff. So they've got to be able to identify who's 1, who's the cut key, and then flash their eyes essentially on the snap to the cut key and run their path. Okay, we'll talk about their path here in just a second. Again, we teach them to roll their backside knees. So here's a play that's going to the right. He'd roll his backside, his left knee on the takeoff to hopefully get him going a little bit. We coach him to have a big pocket and a soft pocket. And the quarterback would then seat the ball. And on zone dive or the first phase of the triple, if it's a give, he pushes that into the B-back's stomach. The aiming point for the B-back is the inside leg of the guard. And we've changed this a little bit, and we change it sometimes based on who the B-back is and their ability and stuff like that. We used to tell the kids to aim at the crack of the guard, and what we found is it took their path a little too wide. So we tell them aim at the inside leg of the guard to try to make sure that path is tightened. So if we do get a closer, it allows that closer then cannot make a play on the quarterback, right? If the quarterback makes the right read, we're good when we're running triple. For this, it just keeps it tight and allows him to use the action key or the cut key to make that first cut. We teach on zone dive, you're stepping play side foot first. I'll show a drill here at the end, at one of the things that we've done for it. And the big part on this is, and the part that you really got to rep, is the B-back needs to read the cut key and needs to make an adjustment. So again, it's the first defender inside number one. And if that defender collapses or goes inside, then our B-back should take a shuffle step or a slide step opposite of that player and go. That's where his first cut is. If that player, if it's a 2-eye and he jumps out to a 3, then our B-back should cut back underneath them. And that's the part that takes a lot of time in practice. And then once the kids get it, they kind of get it, they get in a flow. But we've all seen it before, regardless of what offense you run. You probably have seen people run into the backs of their linemen and things like that. I'll show you a little drill at the end that we've used to kind of help that. So when we're putting this all together now, we talked about the lineman up front. Let's talk B-back first here. So his aiming point is the inside leg of the guard. When he gets down in the stance, he's looking at, okay, who's number one, where they're lined up. Okay, and sometimes we'll read a 4-eye, sometimes we won't. In this case, here's number one, here's number 2, here's number 3. Action key or the cut key is this 2-eye. So as he's on his path, if this 2-eye were to jump out into the B gap, then the cut key would be right here and up. Okay? If this 2-eye stays where he is, he's on his path. That's why it's incredibly important for the B-back to understand and to see where the cut key is. Okay? Again, what we want to do here with the play side A is to reduce the space in between the tackle and the A, work in this, double team here, and zone in this side. If 2 comes in, we're going to block them. Okay? If 2 stays out, we're going to keep going up, in backer to free, right? Backside A, again, is responsible through motion, through the fake, to influence number 3. So if we look at this 8-man front, number 3's right here. Our rules would say load. Load path looks the same. Boom, boom. We want to get underneath 1. Okay, if 2 flashes in there, we're going to take them. And then hopefully we've got a cut back here. 3's coming through. Hopefully using good motion, heel motion, hard. And they need to influence this guy right here and to get him to run to the perimeter. And if we can get him to run the perimeter, it opens up more of a cutback lane for our B-back on zone dive. Okay? When we look at the quarterback, we're taking triple steps. Okay? We teach our quarterbacks to have balanced stance. Okay? We want weight evenly distributed so they can go back to either side. We teach them to use a clock for their footwork. So as they're standing with their feet shoulder width apart, right in front of them is 12, right behind them 6. So we teach our footwork off the clock just for that visual. And they're going to take their steps. So if we're going to the right, we're telling them that you're going to step here on essentially 1 and 5, right? 1 and 3 to go through there. They're going to shift their weight through their mesh. The quarterback is going to be looking at 1, just because we always want him there. But he's got to flash 1 to 2, his eyes, especially on zone dive. Ideally, the quarterback is going to influence number 2. And the quarterback should be responsible for number 2 by carrying out his fake. And this part gets There's different ways to do it, different ways that people teach the quarterback to carry the ball. We teach coming off the mesh. If you give it, your hands are up in the middle of your chest and you're rocking. Okay. And then you carry out your fake. We want to run at the inside shoulder of number 2. And we're going to remove him or block him with the action of the quarterback. Very similar to what our A-back's doing with number 3. And we've got to be effective at running triple if this is going to work. Or they have to at least respect it, right? And they have to be able to respect the second phase. And that's why, all this stuff kind of plays in together and why zone dive becomes so incredibly important. Because if we're good at running triple, if we can get the ball in the perimeter, if we can get it pitched a couple times, it loosens everything up. And it makes this play, which is highly effective and really inexpensive, go. When we look at our receivers, we label them X and Z. We inside foot's up in their stance. We want them to use their triple rules, ID the deep defender, push that inside shoulder and stalk that defender, get inside of him, and everything's according to the call. And we can change this up with formation and talk about, when are we going to switch? When are we going to crack? Things like that. And typically those are all worked into the play call in our tags that we can use on almost any play that we have. This is a clip from our playoff game. The team we're playing is, or was the state champion, the 4A state champion in Minnesota last year. Incredibly talented, very well coached, but this is us running zone dive with it. Now, there's a little difference here. We're in a tight end set. We thought this gave us a better chance against these guys running dive. We widened out our A-backs simply because we want that to hit here. Our path is going to be the same, and hopefully what we get is a double team. We'll get a load path. Quarterback will take care of this guy right here. B-back's going to be reading the down defender. The cut key. See, the cut key goes in, B-back goes out. We're trying to influence these guys to come out and open up those cutback lanes. Which we're able somewhat to do. Now, one of the things that breaks down here is our center. Instead of going play side, they're making a call here. We should be going zoning everything down, inside gap, inside gap, inside gap, double team here. Should have a double team here to here and a load up. And we just have a schematic breakdown or an execution breakdown there. So our double team ends up being on the other side of it. But you can see here, we want a double team here. We want a double team here up to this guy and then open it up. You can see the cut that the B-back made. The defender here does a heck of a job getting off the block and making a play. And we had that unblocked defender because of the call that was made by our center. There's different variations to this play too. Different tags that we use. I think everybody probably uses tags, but we can add pick to it. I'll show an example of that here in a second, and that just is a call to a tag for the play side tackle to step inside on their veer, and then they block out on number 1, just to try to mess with that read a little bit. Same thing on if we're running pick, the play side A is going to load then in backer to free. We're going to hopefully take care of number 2 with the quarterback and number 3 with the backside A. We can have a call where we could change the location of the double team. And essentially what that does is it moves it from a zone dive of a 22-23 to a hole wider. So it looks like essentially outside veer. So if we double team that 4-eye, we'll make a call up front. B-back's got to hear it. Now he knows that he's got to be on the outside of that, and it turns the path a little bit. So now he's aiming at the inside leg of the tackle and going up. And that's just a call we make at the line. And it ends up looking a little bit like duo, which I particularly like. We really struggled running power. We put a little duo stuff in last year, and then coupled with this, we get a very similar look, and it just lets us, in our offense, gives us another option for a predetermined run. So this is what pick would look like. Okay, so kind of same deal in the backfield, same aiming point for the B-back. The difference in pick is we're going to step inside like we're going to veer this 5. We're going to do this against an outside technique. We're going to step inside like we're veering the 5, and then we're going to block out down with a 22 path double team here. We're going to load this A-back up in. There's also different calls where we'll insert him here into that B-back. So it's kind of like an ISO, and that could be zone dive, could be quarterback follow, things like that. But pick does that. And then we're looking at, different formation variations between tackle over formations, tight end formations, things like that. Flex sets where we're bringing in the receivers tighter. And all those things give you different options on how you're going to block the perimeter, different looks, and really ends up being a pretty good window dressing on running a fairly effective play. And you could do a lot of different things out of it as well. So we vary our formations a little bit, and you just try to get extra gaps, try to get different looks, but we're basically running the same plays. So this I got from a clinic I was at a year or so ago, but what you're seeing is one of the drills we use to have the B-back identify the cut key. And this is like 2 dowels, okay, that has a screw right here that you can vary the angle on it. So you can run it if you're running midline. You just put these right on top of each other, right there. If you're running zone dive or inside veer, it's the angle you want it. You're aiming at the inside leg of the guard. If it's outside veer, you just put it a little wider. But essentially, what you're looking at is the B-back steps, and we've repped this tremendously, and we've got to continue to get better at it. But B-backs in their stance, if we're running zone dive to the right, here's step 1, here's step 2, right? Now you got your big pocket, step 3, and then you get to step 4. And on step 4 is where he's got to decide. We've got a coach here. We'll set up different agility bags, things like that. And what the coach will do is move this way. And if the coach moves that way, he's going to slide on his 4th step, slide, and go up. If the coach comes this way on his 4th step, he's going to plant and go straight up. So we're looking at trying to figure out how can we get the B-back to understand that action key and really influence his ability to not think and just react. We'll do this often with bags. We'll set up agilities and have them finish through, on both things. We really like them to finish, 5 through and just keep going. It's like the Urban Meyer 10+2, all that stuff. Then we'll flip it, go both sides. We'll use our hose here. We bought a A-frame hose that I think every option team probably has. And then we look to vary that. And this is just quarterbacks and B-backs. We'll bring centers and guards in as well for aiming points. And we'll put a defender there as we go through the season just to get a little bit better look. And then it's just repping the heck out of the look. So, a 0 and a 4-eye, a 2-eye, 5, 2-eye, 4-eye, all that stuff. And we'll just put it all in there and get them to identify their rules and then try to watch where their eyes are, right? The whole time the quarterback's working on their mesh steps, so they're getting the same work as we go through. but we're asking them, all right, who's number one? And sometimes we'll hold up numbers beforehand, rotate it through. Who's your cut key? And they've got to identify their cut key. And then on the fourth step, 1, 2, 3, 4, they're either going to slide and cut up, or they're going to stay their path. If he jumps in, stay their path and get vertical. Well, that was a whole lot on a pretty simple, inexpensive, but really, really effective play. I hope you all got something out of it. If there's anything I can do to help, if anybody wants to talk football, there's my email address, gspahn@isd318.org, and my cell phone is on there as well. Give me a call, shoot me an email. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this, and hopefully we can talk about different aspects of the offense. Open to talk really about anything as we get going. So really like to thank Coach for the opportunity to present, and like I said, anybody needs anything, let me know. I'm an open book. Everything I've gotten, I've stolen, and I am more than willing to share that as well. Thanks, guys.